My name's Elena Brooks, and the first time I realized my family had been lying to me was the day a bank manager looked me dead in the eyes and asked, "Ma'am, are you aware there's a foreclosure notice attached to your name?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I genuinely thought the man had mixed me up with somebody else. I was 26 years old, working 60-hour weeks in downtown Chicago, living off iced coffee, instant noodles, and blind ambition like every burned-out corporate girl in America. I didn't own a house. Hell, I could barely afford parking downtown. So when he turned the monitor toward me and I saw my name connected to a property in Arizona worth almost $500,000, my stomach dropped so hard I thought I was going to throw up right there in his office. Because that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the co-signer listed underneath me, my mother. And suddenly, every weird moment from my childhood started clicking together like a loaded gun. You ever have one of those moments where your whole life rewrites itself in real time? Yeah, that was mine. Welcome back to Quiet Betrayal Stories, the place where family secrets don't stay buried forever. If you're listening right now, drop your city and local time in the comments. I always read them late at night when I can't sleep. And trust me, after this story, you're going to want to check your credit report too. Because what happened to me started when I was 12. 12, before I even knew what debt meant, before I knew what a mortgage was, before I knew the people who tuck you into bed at night can still wreck your future while you're sleeping in the next room. I grew up in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Small town, cornfields, Friday night football, church parking lots full by 8 a.m., the kind of town where everybody says we're blessed while drowning in bills nobody talks about. My dad, Roger Brooks, owned a small roofing company that was always about to take off. That's what he said every year, about to take off. Meanwhile, my mom, Sandra, worked front desk at a dental clinic and smoked cigarettes behind the garage like she was hiding from her own life. We weren't poor, exactly, but money moved through our house like a ghost. Nobody discussed it directly. You just felt it, like tension in the walls. Like when the lights got shut off for 2 days and my mom told me it was because the electric company messed up. Or when Dad started disappearing for business trips that somehow always ended with another maxed-out credit card and another screaming match in the kitchen after midnight. I learned early that silence was survival. My younger brother, Mason, didn't notice much. He was the golden boy. Football, blue eyes, easy smile. Dad loved boys who played sports. I was quieter. I liked numbers, liked patterns, liked organizing things because chaos made my skin crawl. By 13, I was already making spreadsheets for fun. Yeah, I know, nerd behavior, but that's probably the only reason I survived what came later. At 16, I got my first job at a diner off Highway 20, $7.25 an hour plus tips. Every paycheck went into a metal cookie tin under my bed because my parents said bank accounts were a scam designed to trap working people. I believed them. That's the thing about kids. You don't realize your normal is insane until you leave home and hear other people talk. In our house, privacy didn't exist. My mom opened my mail. Dad borrowed money from my birthday cards. Mason took my clothes whenever he wanted. And every time I complained, my mother used the same phrase, "Family takes care of family." She said it like scripture, like law, like something too holy to question. But what she really meant was this: what's yours belongs to us. I just didn't understand that yet. Fast forward, I got into Northwestern on a scholarship. Not full ride, but enough to escape. I still worked 3 jobs to survive: campus library, coffee shop, data entry for a law office downtown. Meanwhile, Mason got a brand new Ford F-150 for graduation. Dad called it an investment in his future. My future looked like ramen noodles and panic attacks. But every time I asked why things were different for me,
Mom would sigh dramatically and say, "You're stronger than your brother, Ellie. He needs more help." Funny how the strongest kid in the family always gets used like free labor. I graduated at 22 with a degree in financial analytics, got hired by a consulting firm in Chicago. Tiny apartment, insane hours, but it was mine. Mine. Do you know how powerful that feels when you come from a family where nothing was ever really yours? For 4 years, I built my life brick by brick. No vacations, no dating, no distractions, just work. I thought I was finally safe. Then came the bank meeting. See, I had decided to buy my first condo. Nothing fancy, just a 1-bedroom overlooking the river. The kind of place you cry over because nobody helped you get there. I walked into that bank proud as hell. I walked out, barely breathing. The manager printed the report and slid it across the table carefully, like he already knew it was going to wreck me. There were 5 properties under my name. 5.
2 foreclosures, 3 delinquent business loans, credit card debt in 4 states. Total liability? $782,000. I remember staring at the number thinking, that can't even be mathematically possible. I made $73,000 a year. I drove a used Honda with 1 busted speaker. Who the hell was living under my identity? Then I saw the addresses: Cedar Falls, Des Moines, Phoenix, and 1 LLC registered in Nevada. Brooks Family Holdings, LLC. Registered owner, Elena Marie Brooks. Me. Filed when I was 17. I sat there frozen while the bank manager kept talking. Words like fraudulent activity, collections, federal reporting. But I couldn't hear him anymore. Because suddenly I remembered something. Senior year, Dad asking for my Social Security card for scholarship paperwork. Mom making copies of my driver's permit. The way they suddenly started getting new furniture around the same time they kept saying money was tight. Oh my God. Oh my God. I called my mother from the parking garage. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone. She answered cheerful. "Hey, baby." "Mom, why is there a business under my name?" Silence. Then a sigh. Not panic, not confusion. A sigh, like I was inconveniencing her. "Ellie, your father and I were gonna tell you eventually." My knees almost gave out. Eventually? Eventually when? After prison? After bankruptcy? After my entire future burned down? "It was temporary," she said quickly. "We needed help after the recession." "Help? Help? You stole my identity." "No," she snapped. "Don't be dramatic. We used your credit. Big difference." Used my credit. Like borrowing a sweater, like borrowing sugar, like $782,000 was normal family behavior. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. "Besides, family takes care of family." I hung up, not because I was calm, because if I stayed on that phone another 10 seconds, I was going to scream. And deep down, I already knew this story was way bigger than they were admitting. Because numbers don't lie. People do. And I work with numbers for a living. That night, I opened my laptop and started digging. And what I found made me realize my parents hadn't just stolen from me. They had built their entire life on top of my identity. I didn't sleep that night. Not even close. I sat on the floor of my apartment at 2:13 in the morning with my laptop open, cold coffee beside me, and 37 browser tabs glowing like warning signs in the dark. Every tab led back to me, my name, my social security number, my credit. But none of it was my life. That's the part people don't understand about identity theft. It's not just money. It feels like somebody skinned your future and wore it around like a Halloween costume. I started with the LLC, Brooks Family Holdings, Nevada registration, filed 9 years earlier. The listed owner? Elena Marie Brooks. The business address? My parents' house in Cedar Falls. The filing date made my stomach twist. October 11th, my 17th birthday. I remember that birthday. Mom bought a grocery store cake with purple frosting because purple was my favorite color. Dad gave Mason 50-yard line tickets to an Iowa football game 2 days later just because. And somewhere between candles and birthday photos, they were filing corporate paperwork in my name. I pulled the tax filings next. That's when the real nightmare. I didn't sleep that night. Not even close. I sat on the floor of my apartment at 2:13 in the morning with my laptop open, cold coffee beside me, and 37 browser tabs glowing like warning signs in the dark. Every tab led back to me, my name, my social security number, my credit. But none of it was my life. That's the part people don't understand about identity theft. It's not just money. It feels like somebody skinned your future and wore it around like a Halloween costume. I started with the LLC, Brooks Family Holdings, Nevada registration, filed 9 years earlier. The listed owner? Elena Marie Brooks. The business address? My parents' house in Cedar Falls. The filing date made my stomach twist. October 11th, my 17th birthday. I remember that birthday. Mom bought a grocery store cake with purple frosting because purple was my favorite color. Dad gave Mason 50-yard line tickets to an Iowa football game 2 days later just because. And somewhere between candles and birthday photos, they were filing corporate paperwork in my name. I pulled the tax filings next. That's when the real nightmare started. 7 years of business returns, rental properties, equipment write-offs, vehicle deductions. Income reported under my social security number totaled over $1.8 million across multiple years. I nearly blacked out reading it, because during those same years, I was eating instant ramen in a dorm room, trying to figure out how to stretch $20 until Friday. My parents weren't surviving, they were building wealth. On paper, I looked like a failed real estate investor drowning in debt. In reality, I was a 26-year-old woman who still reused tea bags to save money. The betrayal hit in waves. 1 second, I'd feel numb. The next second, I'd want to put my fist through the wall. Then came the part that really broke me. The houses. See, I started tracing the loans connected to my name. 5 properties total. 3 were rentals. 1 had already been foreclosed. And one was my parents' current house. The house they'd been living in for 6 years. The beautiful 2-story home with granite countertops my mother kept posting on Facebook with captions like, "Blessed beyond measure." That house was financed under my identity. I was paying for my parents' dream life without even knowing it existed. I drove to Cedar Falls the next weekend. Didn't tell them I was coming. 6-hour drive. Rain the whole way. Country music playing low because silence felt too loud. By the time I pulled into their neighborhood, my chest hurt so bad I thought I might actually be having a heart attack. Their house looked even nicer in person. Fresh landscaping, new SUV in the driveway, outdoor fire pit. You know what killed me? The ease of it. The comfort. They looked comfortable,
living inside my stolen future. Mom opened the door, smiling like nothing was wrong. "Ellie, you should have called." I walked past her into the kitchen. Granite counters, stainless steel appliances, a refrigerator bigger than my first apartment bathroom. Dad looked up from the table. For 1 second, one tiny second, I saw guilt on his face. Then it vanished. "What's with the long face, kiddo?" Kiddo. Like I was still 12. Like he hadn't destroyed my financial life before I could legally vote. I dropped the printed credit report on the table, all 63 pages. The sound echoed through the kitchen. Nobody spoke. Dad flipped through the papers slowly. Mom crossed her arms immediately. Defensive. Not ashamed. Defensive. That told me everything. "How long?" I asked quietly. Dad rubbed his forehead. "Ellie, how long?" Mom answered instead. "Since the recession." I did the math instantly. 10 years. 10 years they'd been using my identity. 10 years of lies. 10 years of loans, businesses, tax returns, credit cards, mortgages. My entire adult life was poisoned before it even started. "You committed federal crimes," I whispered. Mom rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, don't start acting brand new because you moved to Chicago." That sentence changed something inside me permanently, because she genuinely didn't think she'd done anything wrong. Not really. To her, I was selfish for being upset. Dad finally spoke. "We were going to fix it before you found out." I laughed. Not a happy laugh, the kind that comes right before a nervous breakdown. Fix what? There's almost 800 grand attached to my name. Dad slammed his hand on the table. "We did what we had to do." There it was. The truth. Not apology, not regret, just justification. Mom stepped closer. "You have any idea what we sacrificed for you kids?" I stared at her, because suddenly memories started rearranging themselves. The missed school trip because money was tight. The years I worked double shifts while Mason got allowance money. The Christmas I got socks while Dad bought himself a fishing boat 3 months later. They weren't surviving, they were choosing, and every choice had my name attached to it. "You ruined my life," I said quietly. Mom's face hardened instantly. "No, we gave you one." That line hit harder than anything else, because that's how narcissists work. They break your legs, then demand credit for carrying you. I looked around the kitchen, the expensive cabinets, the giant TV, the farmhouse decor my mom bragged about online, paid for with debt collectors calling me during work meetings, paid for with apartment applications getting denied, paid for with panic attacks at 3 a.m. "You need to transfer everything back," I said. "Now." Dad shook his head immediately. "We can't." Why not? Because they already knew the answer. Their own credit was destroyed years ago. That's why they needed mine. Mom tried a softer voice. "Sweetheart, if you report this, we lose everything." I looked at her for a long time. Then I said the sentence she never expected. "You already took everything." Silence. The kind of silence that changes families forever. Then Mason walked in. Football hoodie, truck keys, protein shake in his hand. "What's going on?" Mom answered before I could. "Your sister's having one of her dramatic episodes." I turned toward him. "Mason, did you know the house is under my name?" His face changed instantly. Too fast, too guilty, and suddenly I knew. You knew. "It's complicated. You knew? Dad stood up. Watch your tone. My whole body started shaking. Not fear, rage. Pure rage. Because everybody knew except me. The entire family had been standing on my neck financially while smiling in my face at Thanksgiving. Mason looked uncomfortable. Dad said it was temporary. Temporary. That word again. Like 10 years was temporary? Like identity theft had an expiration date? You let me struggle, I whispered. You watched me work 3 jobs in college while you drove a truck bought with my credit. Mason looked away. That hurt more than if he'd yelled. Because guilt means he knew I was right. Mom suddenly snapped. You think you're better than us now because you work in some fancy office? I stared at her. No, I said quietly. I think I deserved parents who didn't steal from me. That shut the room down. Dad looked exhausted suddenly, older, smaller. For a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the foreclosure notice with my name on it. Sympathy disappeared real quick. Mom started crying, loud, dramatic, weaponized tears. You're going to tear this family apart over money? And there it was again, that manipulation, as if they weren't the ones who committed fraud, as if I was the villain for noticing. I grabbed the papers off the table. You have 30 days, I said. After that, I'm going to the police. Dad paled instantly. Mom stopped crying mid-breath. You wouldn't. I looked at her directly. You should have thought about that when I was 17. Then I walked out, hands shaking, heart pounding. Halfway down the driveway, my mother screamed after me. Family takes care of family. I turned around one last time, rain pouring, wind freezing, and I finally answered the sentence that controlled my whole childhood. No, I said, healthy families do. Then I got in my car and drove away. I wish I could tell you I felt strong after that. I didn't. I felt destroyed. Because here's the ugly truth nobody talks about. When your own parents betray you, your brain still tries to protect them, even after everything, even after proof, even after the lies. Part of me kept hoping they'd call and say, "We're sorry, we'll fix it. You mattered more than money." Instead, 3 days later, I got served with legal papers at work. My own father was suing me. The receptionist at my office walked over holding the envelope like it was radioactive. Elena, somebody just dropped this off for you." I remember the exact sound the paper made when I opened it. That thick, legal paper shuffle. The kind that instantly makes your stomach sink before you even read a word. Petition for financial interference. Filed by Roger Brooks, my father, against me. I actually laughed at first, not because it was funny, because my brain genuinely couldn't process the level of audacity. These people stole my identity for 10 years, and now they were suing me. According to the filing, my threats to report the fraud were causing intentional emotional and financial harm to the family business. Family business? You mean the fake business built on my social security number? I sat there staring at the papers while people around me kept typing, answering emails, living normal lives. Meanwhile, mine was detonating quietly at desk 42. That was the moment something inside me finally snapped clean in half. Not emotionally. Emotionally, I'd already been bleeding for weeks. No, this was different. This was clarity. Crystal clear. Because innocent people don't sue the victim. Guilty people panic. I called a lawyer that afternoon. Her name was Vanessa Kane. Sharp eyes, Brooklyn accent, didn't waste words. She read everything in silence for almost 20 minutes. Then she leaned back in her chair and said, "Elena, your parents are cooked." That was the first time somebody said it out loud. Not misunderstanding, not family issues, not money problems. Crimes. Real crimes. Vanessa filed motions immediately. Credit freezes, fraud alerts, identity theft reports, IRS complaints. Every form felt like another nail in the coffin of the family I thought I had. And every single time I typed my parents' names into official documents, my chest tightened. Not because I doubted myself anymore, because grief is weird. People think betrayal turns love off instantly. It doesn't. Sometimes love stays way longer than it should. That's the cruel part. The investigation moved fast after that, way faster than I expected. Turns out banks get real interested when mortgage fraud crosses state lines, especially when fake LLCs and tax filings start stacking up. Federal investigators contacted me 2 weeks later. 2 agents, downtown office, gray conference room, tiny bottles of warm water nobody drinks. They already knew more than I did. That scared me. "Miss Brooks," one agent said carefully, "your identity appears connected to at least 11 fraudulent financial instruments." 11. Not 5. 11. I felt physically sick. They laid photographs across the table. Properties, loan documents, business filings, all carrying my name. One document showed my forged signature beside $1 million commercial loan application. $1 million! I almost stopped breathing. I never signed that. We know. Then came the worst part. The agent slid another paper toward me. A bank transfer history. Money flowing from business accounts directly into Mason's tuition fund. My little brother's college degree had been financed with stolen money tied to my identity. Suddenly, every family Facebook post made sense. Proud football mom, blessed to send our boy to college debt-free. Debt-free for him, not for me. Never for me. I drove home numb that night. Chicago traffic blurred together. At one red light, I realized I'd been gripping the steering wheel so hard my palms were bleeding where my nails dug in. That's the thing about betrayal. Your body keeps score even when your brain shuts down. My mother called at 11:42 p.m. I almost didn't answer. Almost. But some stupid little piece of me still hoped maybe this time she'd apologize. Instead, she opened with, "How dare you involve federal agents?" Not hello, not how are you. That. I stared at my ceiling in silence. Then she started crying. Hard. Messy. Manipulative. "Elena, they're treating us like criminals." I finally spoke. "That's because you are." Silence. Cold silence. Then came the rage. "You ungrateful little bitch." I froze. My mother had never called me that before. Not directly. Oh, she'd implied it plenty, but hearing it out loud? Different kind of pain. "We fed you," she screamed. "We clothed you. We sacrificed everything for you." I sat up slowly. "No," I said quietly. "You invested in yourselves using my future as collateral." She inhaled sharply. And right there, I knew she understood exactly what she'd done. Maybe not morally, but legally. Oh, she understood now. Dad grabbed the phone next. "Elena, listen to me carefully. Families survive hard times together." "You mean by committing felonies?" "Watch your mouth." "No, you watch yours. You forged my signature. You opened loans in my name before I was even legally an adult." Dad's voice dropped lower. Threatening.
If this goes to court, everybody loses. And there it was. Not remorse, fear. Because suddenly they realized the little quiet daughter who stayed obedient her whole life worked in financial analytics now. I understood paperwork, patterns, evidence, and unlike them, I kept receipts. The court date started 3 months later. I didn't attend the first hearing. Couldn't. Physically couldn't. Vanessa went instead. She called me afterward. "Alina, your mother tried telling the judge you consented." I nearly dropped my phone. "What?" "She claimed you verbally agreed to help the family financially." I laughed so hard I scared myself, because it was insane. Absolutely insane. I was 17. What 17-year-old verbally agrees to mortgage fraud? But desperate people rewrite history to survive it. That's what they were doing now, rewriting me, rewriting my childhood, rewriting the crime. The forensic audit uncovered everything eventually. Every transfer, every fake signature, every fraudulent filing. Turns out, Dad's roofing company had been failing for years. Instead of declaring bankruptcy, they built a new life using me. New house, vehicles, vacations, tuition, credit cards. They weren't barely surviving, they were living good. And the entire foundation rested on stolen identity documents pulled from my bedroom drawer when I was a kid. The trial lasted 8 days. I testified on day 4. Worst day of my life. My mother wouldn't look at me. Dad looked furious the whole time. Mason looked broken. Honestly, that almost hurt most, because he wasn't evil. Weak, yes. Complicit, yes. But evil? No. He just loved comfort more than truth. A lot of people do. The prosecutor asked me one question I'll never forget. When did you realize your parents viewed your identity as property rather than personhood? God, that question hit like a truck, because suddenly my entire childhood made sense. The opened mail, the stolen birthday money, the family shares everything speeches, the guilt every time I tried setting boundaries. They never saw me as separate from them. I was an asset, a backup plan with a social security number. I answered honestly. I think they stopped seeing me as a daughter the moment my name became useful. You could hear a pin drop in that courtroom. Even Dad looked down after that. The verdict came 2 days later. Guilty on multiple counts. Mortgage fraud, identity theft, wire fraud, tax fraud. My mother cried hysterically. Dad looked completely empty. Mason took a plea deal for cooperating financially after investigators proved he knew about the fraudulent tuition transfers. Probation, community service, restitution payments. The judge gave my parents prison time. Not life-changing decades, but enough. Enough to finally force reality onto people who spent years running from it. When the sentencing ended, I walked outside alone. Cold air, gray skies, news vans across the street, and for the first time in almost a year, I felt quiet. Not happy, not victorious, just quiet, like surviving a tornado and realizing the screaming finally stopped. 6 months later, my credit finally started recovering. Fraudulent accounts removed one by one, score climbing slowly. I moved into a new apartment overlooking Lake Michigan. Nothing luxurious, but every single thing inside belonged to me. The couch, the dishes, the lease. Mine. You don't understand how beautiful ownership feels until somebody steals your identity. One night, I was unpacking boxes when I found the old cookie tin from under my childhood bed.
still dented, still ugly. Inside was one $20 bill and a faded note in teenage handwriting. "Someday I'll have enough money to leave." I sat on the kitchen floor and cried for almost an hour, because that little girl knew. Deep down, she always knew. People ask me now if I forgive my parents. Truth, I don't know. Forgiveness isn't a light switch, and some damage changes the architecture of your heart forever. But I'll tell you this, protecting yourself is not betrayal, setting boundaries is not cruelty, and sharing DNA with somebody does not give them ownership over your future. Family should feel like safety, not survival. Last month, I checked my credit score again, the highest it's ever been. I stared at that number for a long time, not because it was impressive, but because it was clean, mine, earned honestly, no lies attached. Then I closed the app, locked my phone, and stepped onto my apartment balcony overlooking the water. Chicago wind freezing my face, traffic humming below, skyline glowing gold, and for the first time in my entire life, my name finally belonged to me.